Scott, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, good morning, Oliver. Thanks for the time.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on and for sharing this important information. We're going to be talking about House File 2652, formerly HSB 692. It's a intentional bill to, protect schools, especially in wake of some of the issues we've had in Iowa after the tragedy of the Perry shooting. I think the bill has good intentions, but there's some unintended consequences in this bill that I don't think legislators really are understanding. And so Scott is going to help us get some insight into that and what some of these unintended consequences are. So go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Oliver. To your point, the intentions are fantastic because we want to make sure that our Iowa schools are as safe as can be, given the trends in the country and now even locally here. Now, one thing, the risk of a school going into an active shooter situation is very, very low. Most schools will never face that. However, it's horrific when it happens, and the odds are increasing, and that's why it's so important to keep our schools safe. What I thought I'd do, Oliver, to help address some of this challenge is give a little bit of background about IntelliSee, right? Because we're a similar solution that's being outlined in this bill. We think it's a better solution because it actually will save money. But by giving that background, I'll show some of the capabilities of the new technologies that are emerging to help keep schools safe. And one specific technology that's identical to ours is actually being called out and in the current language in the bill.
Right.
That connects into a little bit of misinformation that is driving some challenges that will actually impact an Iowa-based company like IntelliSee and others that provide tremendous solutions to schools as well. So, if I may, let me give you a little bit of background on IntelliSee, because we're actually a spin out of the University of Iowa. The company's name is called Malum Terminus Technologies, and that's Latin for stopping bad, and that's why we formed. We're also state-backed, so the Iowa Economic Development Authority is using Iowa tax dollars to help grow economic development in the state with emerging technologies like ours, because not only can it help keep schools safe, it drives a lot of economic development through high-tech jobs coming into Iowa, through a laundry list of our partners and customers, which I've shown a few down there below. But ultimately, we started in 2020, did live betas in 2021, saving the university a ton of money, and then won a great award in 2022 by our trade association, and then have started going out into market. What we do is a field of artificial intelligence called computer vision. And ultimately, that looks at like the pixels on your screen to predict, hey, what's on the screen? Or in our case, we look at live surveillance feeds in our schools, our hospitals, we're in Iowa churches and retirement villages to monitor and look at those live streams from their surveillance cameras to detect bad things, to give them the situational awareness to act. And those bad things can range from an active shooter situation, what we call the rare but catastrophic, all the way to the very common slip and fall, water damage, trespassing, and those kind of things. This is an actual alert from a couple days ago in one of our schools here in Iowa. What you see here is, hey, in this case, it was a trespassing situation, but what's going on? Where is it going on? When is it going on? What you don't see here are what's called personally identifiable information, or PII. We don't do facial recognition, and that's very important because there's regulation in schools. It's called FERPA, and hospitals it's called HIPAA. There's increasing regulation around privacy. You have to balance safety and privacy with safety and education and those things. And we've balanced all of that as we go forward to try to, in our mission, make the world a safer place. Also, the system's always on. So these cameras are always on. Our system is always reading those. And that's very, very important because in this case, it's another trespass situation. But God forbid this was an active shooter situation. There's a lot of chaos when that's happening and a lot of misinformation in that chaos. As an example, the horrific school shooting at the Covenant schools in Nashville. As the police rushed in, they were given no less than 3 pieces of misinformation, including the assailant was downstairs and the kids were upstairs, when the reality was just the opposite. And that can lead to more carnage, more risk, as they're trying to find the active shooter in that situation. As I mentioned, our system, and this is unlike the system that's listed in the current language, our system detects a whole bunch of things all at once. And this is important because, as I mentioned, most schools will never, thankfully, face an active shooter situation. What they absolutely will face are all these other common risks. This is how the insurance industry views the world. This is how we view the world. And ultimately, if you can protect the schools from the active shooter situation while also protecting them and saving them money with the other things, then that's a great combination, because the schools are also resource starved. They don't have enough resources, whether it's an SRO or others, to manage the square footage that they have. And by having the computer autonomously look at their cameras to say, hey, pay attention over here, that's an efficiency and cost play as well. I did want to clear up some misinformation that's we've become aware that there's misinformation about us. First off, we are 100% a United States company. We're Iowa based. As I mentioned at the beginning, we're a spin out of the University of Iowa. The Iowa Economic Development Authority has backed us, and we're creating jobs here. We also only use U.S. developers and suppliers. Our hardware is U.S. Our web hosting is U.S. There is not data anywhere besides the U.S. In fact, the vast majority of data resides at our customers' locations. We've developed our own proprietary code by our U.S. developers. This isn't freeware out there being leveraged for other reasons. In fact, we've previously worked with the U.S. Department of Defense. And to do that, you have to have all of these kind of things that I just listed. We've raised a lot of money, in my opinion, but not nearly as much as the big people out there trying to get into this space. But we're spending it on jobs and technology. We're not spending it on lobbying. And that's one of the challenges here is, in the United States, the big guys can kind of squash the new startups. And there's an unintentional consequence of some of that going on as well.
And this has been done in other states as well, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. So we've had to intervene in other states with the exact same situation, with the exact same supplied language by a biased private company.
Yeah. And I'm sure you'll get to it, but here it is, the language that really keeps everybody else out.
Yeah. And so, again, this is, I think, the unintended consequences of something that sounds good, but when you look into it, it really doesn't matter or make sense. So some of the specific language in the current draft bill refers to the Safety Act. Now, because there's so much going on with our legislators and others, most people won't look into what that means because they're making 1,000 decisions in a day, as opposed to, hey, let me understand what this means. Again, on paper, it sounds great. Hey, you must be Safety Act certified to be considered for these funds. When you look underneath there, that doesn't make sense, because the Safety Act was actually created, as some background for everybody, in 2002 in reaction to 9/11. And that horrific incident there where terrorists took down the Twin Towers and crashed into the Pentagon and those things. Congress was worried about, hey, in the United States, anybody can sue anybody. They were worried about the liability of large venues and then safety solutions working within those large venues. And so they created the Safety Act. And that certification process actually gives liability protection to the venues, to the companies like IntelliSee, if they apply. And that liability protection is an insurance cap, and you can't do punitive damages and those kind of things. I want to be very clear, it's not a good housekeeping seal. It's not a quality assurance program or those kind of things. It's also not a way to give liability protection to schools or hospitals or other buildings and organizations unless they apply. They would have to apply and go through this arduous, time-consuming application process.
How long does it take to get that certification or designation?
The reality is it takes about 1.5 years. Online, it'll say it takes 120 days. That we've actually worked with organizations. We had there's a whole industry around this trying to make profit out of getting people certified. We said no. Most organizations say no. In fact, most safety solutions in our existing schools today do not have a Safety Act certified. It's called a qualified anti-terrorism technology. If we apply, I can virtually guarantee we will get that certification. Based on the criteria and those things. Other companies, right, that are getting unintentionally excluded from this fund, companies like OmniAlert and others, they would get the certification as well. Very large companies like Access, which is a tremendous surveillance camera company, they would get this as well. The reason that companies like us don't is it's very arduous, time-consuming, and expensive to do it, and there are better uses for the dollars and the resources. In our case, use those dollars and resources to create jobs and build out our technology.
What's it
The
cost
challenge
to
is,
hire a consultant? What's it cost to hire a consultant to do the application? Because it's a mountain of
yes, and you have
bureaucracy,
to
right?
renew it on a regular basis. So 2 years ago, we were approached by a very respectable firm. We know the owners of the firm. They do a great job in this space, and they said, "Hey, we'll cut you a deal and only do it for $150,000."
Only, huh?
Well, yeah, only 150. In my mind, that's two jobs. Okay, so do I go pay two computer vision engineers, or do I go do this thing that really doesn't matter because it gives us liability protection against a risk that is very, very low and probably wouldn't happen for us? And that's why we made the decision.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And we're really in Iowa. We're about supporting Iowa business. I don't think that legislators really understand that, they're hearing it's 120 days, it's free, why not apply? But they're
Right.
not really hearing it actually takes 15 months and is a
Yeah.
stack of um, hoops and hurdles to jump through that for something that really doesn't do anything for you.
Right. There's a lot of misinformation flying around out there. And with everything going on, it's really easy to kind of lose sight of some of the details like this. So,
Yeah, you hear a lot about big business inserting language in the legislation that'll keep the smaller businesses out. And this is a
yeah,
perfect example. They've kind of slipped it under the radar.
yeah. And that's our concern, right? In addition, a big company kind of squashing the more innovative solutions coming out there. This also can impact our schools, our taxpayers, right? Because we're state
Right.
backed. But with the schools, as an example, hopefully nobody ever faces what Perry did. The odds are that most schools will never, ever face that. Let's save them money in addition to protecting against that, where most of the industry and the company that's at question here, they only detect weapons. Again, very important, but it's also important to do all the other stuff because we do both.
Right. Right.
So that kind of leads to the unintended consequences, right? So the language in this bill actually would fund $350,000 to go pilot this existing technology in several schools. Well, the question I'd have is, well, we're already helping several Iowa schools, both large and small, public and private. So the technology is already in place. So why fund a pilot with this non-Iowa company, an out-of-state company, when that solution already exists?
So
Why restrict?
a bill asks us to pay another $350,000 to get data that is already there
Yes,
in
yes.
schools and I think you guys are also in small, medium, and large schools, correct?
Yeah, both public and private too.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah. And so I'm very confident those schools were also in community colleges and universities. I'm very confident those organizations would be more than willing to partner to say, hey, here's what the system's doing, right?
Right. Right.
So now this part's self-serving, but it's self-serving on our company's behalf, but also our state taxpayers. We're backed by, right, we're University of Iowa spin out, backed by the Iowa Economic Development Authority and Iowa investors, including some insurance companies out of Iowa, various other organizations. So there, it's like if you exclude unintentionally through this language us, what you're doing then is you're also excluding and negatively impacting economic development here in the state. And from me as a taxpayer, as a father, I live here in Clive, Iowa. I'd prefer my dollars to actually continue to generate Iowa economic development whilst keeping our schools safer. It's the and, right? Can you join them together? And we absolutely can.
So there's an unneeded pilot program, and there's the designation language, and there's the third party monitoring, correct?
Yeah, so there's the one company that's kind of provided this language has a different approach than us and a few others. Their approach is alerts, and I'll show you the technology here in a second, Oliver. The alerts go to their call center, in essence, for them to review and then inform the school or others that something's happening. Our approach and what our customers want is our alerts go directly to the school because the school is familiar with the environment. The school has access to more than the alert, like what I showed you there. They can go pull the live stream. They may have somebody there on site that actually can go inform what's happening. They can involve the first responders. They already have existing standard operating procedures and other systems specifically for those kind of things. Our approach is get that directly to the school as fast as possible to the people that can act, as opposed to having like our staff look at the alert first when we don't know the building itself. We don't know, hey, that may be the janitor or that may be student Susie Q or those kind of things.
So it can go right to their phone or right to their computer or however they decide they want to have the data sent to them.
However they decide.
Yeah.
Right. So to your point, you can get a real-time alert on your phone or you can get an email, but also our system can send it directly to the school's other systems. Every school has a video management system. They have a mass notification system, those kind of things. And that's what we've done is we've built a system to actually fit into their existing infrastructure to save them money that way too, but also so they avoid the complexity of learning an entirely new system. Right. This is to complement their existing safety product protocols. So,
well, and it seems like you would save time if there's somebody in the parking lot with a gun and it has to go to a third party that has to review it and make sure it's not a whatever. And then they have to send it versus sending it right to the AD or right to their alert system or right to, that would go to the police.
And seconds matter in that case. So,
yeah.
Well, Oliver, would you like me to show you a quick live demonstration?
Yeah, okay. Let's see if the recording will make it happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do is stop sharing here and share this other computer.
Okay, great.
Here, I'll turn off the camera so you don't have to see my ugly profile. And so what you should see here in a second, you should see my living room. Can you see my living room? Almost.
I can. Yeah.
Now, it's really important, a couple of things. This is artificial intelligence, and that's fascinating. Ours is what's called deep learning. It's the most advanced. It literally learns like the human brain. Our artificial intelligence, though, has not learned my living room, right? So it doesn't know, hey, this is Scott's living room. It doesn't know that's a couch, all those kind of things. And so part of our process is actually there's a learning process for each installation. Now, with that said, it's still this artificial intelligence is still powerful enough, even without that learning, to detect all kinds of things. And so what I'm going to do is actually walk in front of this surveillance camera. You'll see bounding boxes saying, hey, there's a person there. Now, in certain circumstances, right, certain locations, times of day of week, that may not matter. But in others, like those trespasses I showed, that's very important because that can stop the theft, can stop the assault, can stop the loitering, those kind of things. Then I'm going to turn around with a gun. Now, just for your audience, this is a non-functioning pellet gun. Okay. But that's very important because you'll see how quickly the system detects it, so that you have that real-time situational awareness. And then I'll lay down on the floor because it's also very important to understand, hey, did somebody slip and fall? Did somebody have a medical issue? We could have saved at least 2 lives that I know of if this technology had existed here in Iowa, one at one of our larger K-12 schools, another at one of our major universities. That alone not only saves lives, but saves dollars. In one case, it would have avoided a $19 million lawsuit against a public entity. So I'm going to walk around the corner here in a second. You'll see me, and then you'll see those bounding boxes. So Oliver, can you still hear me?
Yes. Yep.
And so you see those bounding boxes on the screen there. And then what happens when I pull it down?
Oh, wow. Wow.
That's very important because most active shooters start outside. And so you want that early warning coming in before they even get into the building, right? Can you stop the weapon before it comes into the building? Can you stop it before it's fired? Or can you find the bad guy fast? And then, as I mentioned, people fall down and on the ground for numerous reasons.
Wow. Yeah.
Include as I mentioned, we could have saved at least 2 lives, and that's why we're doing what we're doing. We're a mission-based organization, state-backed mission-based organization, try to make the world safer. And because of our technology, we have the audacity to think that we can, so that we feel that we have the responsibility to make the world safer.
Why doesn't everybody else do the slip and falls and the the loitering or the crowd formation or the after hours people in the deal? It just seems like that's where you're going to get the most use out of it. I mean, I would want, if it were my school, I would want that because it's going to save them some money too in the long run.
Yeah, I think the main reason, first off, technically it's very, very hard. We have very, very unique technology, right? So this field of computer vision is growing rapidly. Our approach, we took a very unique approach that gave us the capability to do what I just showed you. And to your point, because Iowa is really the nation's capital for insurance, we're very tied into insurance companies. And they're the ones when we first started saying that, hey, guns are important, but we don't have any insurance claims around them. If you did things like leaks and slip and falls, you'd save everybody a ton of money. And so that's where we then went out to go build the technology to that.
Oh, okay. Well, that's great. That's fantastic.
Well, I think, thank you again, Oliver, for, calling attention to these kind of things because, as you started, the intention of the legislation is fantastic, right? And we're all supportive of that, both as citizens and as a company, right? It ties to our mission. Keep our schools safe. You can't educate our kids if they don't feel safe, if the staff doesn't feel safe, if they truly aren't safe. We feel that there's some fantastic ways to do that. And then there's some very expensive, not so great ways to do that. And addressing, the unintended consequences of the language in this bill would go a long way to help both our schools as well as economic development in the state.
For sure. And just to reiterate those, that would be the unnecessary, or we don't need a pilot program.
Yeah.
We already have the pilot program. You guys have been in schools, multiple schools in Iowa, large, medium, and small, and have the data. So that would save $350,000 of taxpayer money.
Right.
To the DHS designation, designation is unnecessary and
It's unmeaningful.
it keeps Iowa-based companies out. 3, the third-party monitoring. Actually, probably more of a detriment than a benefit.
Yeah, it risks adding time. And then I guess 3 and 4 would be do more than weapons, right?
Oh, right.
Help the school save money in addition to protecting against the guns.
So it would be important to make sure it's from the common occurrence to the catastrophic, as you so eloquently put.
Yeah.
And which I would think we would want in Iowa schools so that it would just do more than what it will probably never do.
Right. In fact, what we've seen is through those savings, at least one large university applied the savings that they achieved through us and spent that back into more safety.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today. I mean, it was very educational. You know, we met with some legislators recently, and they loved the presentation so much. One of them suggested that we do a little video about it, because this way we can, you know, get this in front of legislators. They can take a look and have more of a comprehensive idea of what's going on with this legislation. So thanks a
Yeah.
lot. And if there's not anything else, I'll let you get to your outing.
Thank you so much. Thanks for what you're doing for all of us, Oliver. So
All right. Well, you have a blessed day.
thank you.
Take
Bye-bye.
care.